I'm the director of Jeffco School's Dropout Prevention Office, and over the last 6 years, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the most amazing students in our school district. I've had the honor of hearing stories and participating in journeys of tremendous resilience. Students who have overcome homelessness, drug addiction, parents' drug addiction, and medical problems that would make most of us grown-ups surrender, all just to graduate from high school. On the other hand, there's not a week that goes by that I don't meet with a young adult or a not-so-young adult who's struggling to graduate from high school. Each of them has a different story, and each of their pathways back to school looks very different. All of us know someone, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a loved one who hasn't graduated from high school. And many of them ended up being all right. What we know today, though, is that those friends and family who don't graduate in 2014, far fewer of them will end up being all right. In 2007, our school district took up the challenge to reduce our dropout rate. In those years, we lost approximately 1,700 students a year. Today, nearly half as many, 50% less. Still too many, but we're on the right track. I'll say right now, before I say anything else, that there's not one single magic solution, there's not one re-engagement or student engagement strategy that's going to bring all your students back. No matter what you read in a brochure or hear on TV, there's not one way to keep students moving towards graduation. What we also know is that this process of disengaging from school starts a whole lot sooner than high school. What happens in elementary school directly impacts what happens in those later grades. We know that students' attendance and literacy, and I would make the argument that their connections to other students, to their teachers, and other positive adult role models directly impacts the school experience and the outcomes that we'll have with our students. We as adults can influence this by providing opportunities for mentoring and positive adult role models in our schools. We can make these changes. We know that it's good for our kids, we know that it's good for us, and we know that it's good for our community. I would guess, in looking around and seeing a number of school faces, and myself having been in almost every one of our schools at one time or another, that we have a lot of volunteers in our schools, and there's not a school that doesn't try to engage parents. What I would also guess is that most of the people spending time in your schools and doing this other hard work are mothers. And thank goodness for mothers. Without mothers' involvement in our schools, rare that we'd have a full PTA meeting, rare that you have a good accountability committee, a room parent, and we'd have some pretty lame fundraisers from what I've seen. What we haven't done as well, and it's shameful in some ways, is we haven't engaged fathers in our schools as well as we can. In essence, I look at it as ignoring almost 50% of our potential labor pool if we don't engage fathers in our schools. One strategy I love for engaging fathers is Watchdogs. Watchdogs stands for Dads of Great Students and is a father involvement initiative of the National Center for Fathering. The program intentionally engages fathers as role models in our schools, trying to add that additional dynamic. I promote this program not just as a strategy for dropout prevention. However, I will say, as I said earlier, the more connections, authentic connections we make with kids, the better our outcomes will be. I also have the great pleasure of being a participant in this program for the last few years. In my real life, I'm actually the parent of two young girls, 10-year-old Laura and 7-year-old Cammie. They both attend the same relatively high-performing elementary school, and if you had asked me a few years ago how connected I felt like I was or how much I knew about their school experience, I would have ranked myself pretty high on that scale, pretty high on that continuum. I'm in the same district for 12 years that they go to school in. I was on the accountability committee. I thought I asked the right questions at dinner when we'd come home. I'm one of those parents that reads the Friday folder. After spending a day once a semester, the last couple years in each of their classrooms, what I know now is that was relatively ignorant thinking. The opportunity to connect with them on a different level and to experience their lives in that way allowed me not only the opportunity to connect with my own kids, but to be able to be a positive adult role model for students who might not have that in their own homes. That's the power in this program. Not just the ability to connect with your own kids, but to be that positive male role model for other students who are looking for it. When I talk to other dads who are involved in this program, they echo those same comments. The ability to impact not only their own kids, but to be able to impact kids in their neighborhood and their community. Because it's really a community that we're dealing with when you're not in school. You're running into the same kids. One of the examples I always think of is in my oldest daughter's class, probably last year, the year before. I had this great responsibility of sitting with a group of students, and we were going to work through some math problems with geometric tiles. I think the end goal was for them to have a better sense of fractions. And my first group came in, and there's 3 boys who I know pretty well, and much like me at that age, they probably struggle a little bit to maintain appropriate behavior. And they sit down really nicely, and they read through these directions, and they look at me with these really blank faces. And I know they're waiting for brilliant directions and instructions from this almighty and wise grown-up. And what they got back was this absolutely blank face in return, and an honest admission that I had no idea what we're supposed to do. So the 4 of us sheepishly walk to the teacher, and we get some direction on what we're supposed to do and complete our project. And I hadn't thought about it until a couple months later. I was in my front yard, I'm raking leaves, and one of the boys that was in that group's walking his dog, and he comes over just to say hi. And he purposely says to me, "You know, watchdog," because they never know your name, I'm really doing much better in math now." And I'm thinking it's a course because I had those 23 minutes of brilliant instruction with him months before. So his TCAP score spiked, I'm positive. And he said, when I don't know what to do, I'm always asking the teacher, how to help me out. And he went on his way. And, I overanalyze most things. So I'm bagging leaves, and I'm thinking to myself, of all the young men that I've worked with, and being one at one point a long time ago myself, and thinking that really what was impactful for this young man was the ability to see someone else be in a position of not knowing. This seemingly confident young man knew that it's socially problematic for him to put himself out there and say he didn't know something. But having somebody in my position who was able to say, "I don't know either. Let's figure this out. Let's problem solve together," was the connection that he needed. Oftentimes, as we look at these types of programs, and Watchdogs is just one that I promote, but I would say any involvement that you're looking at with your parents is the right work. Mentoring opportunities for these positive adult role models to work in your schools will significantly impact our dropout rates, and I would make the argument that we would close achievement gaps if we had more fathers involved in our school, more representation that looks like the students that we have working with ourselves as teachers and our students. People ask all the time, how do you engage fathers? And I would say, how wouldn't you? I don't think we've done a great job of extending clear invitations to the other 50% of our potential help out there on how they can engage with us back in school. I think it also helps not to host your meetings during Monday Night Football or Bronco games. It's always a positive. If I'm an educator sitting here today, I would ask myself, why wouldn't I figure out some strategic ways to engage fathers in my school? How would I get them to be involved more in my classrooms and in those unstructured times when we could use additional help? If I'm a parent that's sitting here, I hope I'm also asking myself the question, how can I become more connected to my kids and kids in my community? Thank you.